This is Satan's Trilogy, reading number 3. As Mary said goodbye, Clara went back to a jigsaw puzzle that she was working on. It was 1,200 pieces, and once completed, would be a picture of the Parthenon. Clara seemed to have a love for solving puzzles. Her husband would bring new puzzles once or twice a week, and the two of them would sit for hours focusing on solving them. Jack, Clara's husband, would stay through dinner and then leave for home. He would return the following day just before lunchtime and again enjoy the day together. Having retired 6 years earlier, Jack and Clara had been living on his pension from the United States Post Office and Social Security. He had left their home of nearly 50 years and was now living in a small apartment close to the nursing home. Jack was doing all he could to remain by Clara's side. The visits made his days as fulfilled as they did for Clara. Mary's tray of medications had now been dispensed, and her only remaining duties for the next few hours were to observe the residents. As she entered the hallway, Mary heard a loud voice down the hall at the central desk. Curious, she started for the front desk, where she clearly heard a man yelling. In German, a man was screaming. A man had yelled out loud. Peeking around the corner, Mary could see a man waving a gun about. He was obviously upset and talking in his native tongue. Mary recognized the language as German, and though Mary had learned some German while in the military, she was not certain what this man was saying. It was easily understood from the yelling that he was upset. As Mary viewed the scene, she could see a large man, looking every bit of 200 pounds and at least 6 foot tall, waving a gun in the air. He was probably in his 60s. He again spoke in German, waving the gun around wildly. No one understood his intentions, and the worst was feared. People were scattering for cover. The receptionist behind the desk had run screaming down the closest wing of the nursing home. It was unknown if anyone had called the police or even if the nursing home's hired security was aware of the present danger. Even with Mary's military training, she was not certain how to approach a crazed man wielding a gun, a man that was speaking a foreign language. Mary did not want to see anyone get hurt, but approaching the man without a better understanding of his state of mind seemed suicidal. At that moment, a young, very young woman, perhaps 18 years of age, stood up from a bench in the front foyer. She removed her yellow jacket, folding it once. She then placed it onto a piece of luggage sitting on the floor by her side. She walked towards the man, smiling as she approached. She was slender, perhaps 5 feet 8, somewhat tall for the average young woman. Wearing white cotton slacks with a long-sleeved shirt of matching color, she stood tall, appearing confident and poised. Her face was attractive, her skin was ivory, with a very fair complexion, and her eyes a light sky blue that had a certain beauty that was hard to describe. Approaching the man, the young woman smiled and offered a loving expression. It was peaceful, the way she smiled, a loving smile, like the Mona Lisa. Her lips were in a pleasant, friendly, and compassionate pose, with the mouth closed. She walked up to the man, who had either not noticed her approach or chose to ignore it. Stopping only after coming face to face, she softly spoke. "I understand your pain, but you are not dealing with it properly," she said to him. Then she repeated her words in German. He lowered his gun, apparently confused for the moment. Then his eyes suddenly awoke and he yelled in German something. He raised the gun to his temple and pulled the trigger. Having positioned herself in front of the man, the young woman was less than arm's reach from him. It was difficult for Mary to tell, but as the man pulled the trigger, the young woman reached forward and grabbed the gun. Her hand stopped the hammer from falling on the firing pin. Her movement was so swift that Mary could not believe her eyes. Mary had never seen anyone move that quickly. At that moment, the man thought he would be dead. He had closed his eyes in anticipation of the end. Startled by the fact the gun had not fired, ending his life of pain, he slowly opened his eyes. Seeing the smiling face of the young woman facing him, he began to struggle and attempted to move his arm. In one fluid motion, the young woman moved behind the man and pulled him backwards, leveraging his arm to force him to fall backwards. She controlled his movement, and as he fell slowly, she knelt just behind him, allowing his middle back to rest upon her knee. She had positioned herself to break his fall. Still, with her hand on the gun, she managed to twist his arm back and behind her leg so that he could not correct his position. He was unable to move as the young woman held his gun and hand and offering a loving smile. While holding the gun in her left hand and appearing very calm as the previously crazed man lay straddled across her knee, she took her right hand and removed her hat. Having pulled off the oversized yellow beret, her long blonde hair fell onto her shoulders, softly bouncing for a moment as it eventually settled on her shoulders. She spoke again. "I lost my father 2 months ago," she repeated it in German. Again she spoke. "I loved him very much." Again she repeated her words in German. The man slowly released the gun as she spoke. She took the gun and placed it in her trouser pocket. He started to sob. The girl again spoke. "Our loved ones want us to live on. They will wait for us." She again repeated the words, but in German. The man went limp. He started to cry, slowly falling to the floor as the young woman held him. Sobbing, he broke down and cried uncontrollably. The young woman held him, comforting him as a mother does her child. For a few minutes, the man continued to grieve. He had recently lost his wife to illness at the nursing home. It was a long and hard-fought battle with cancer, but she had finally succumbed to the illness. Their union of over 40 years was strong, and he didn't want to go on without her. Some local police came into the foyer. They immediately grabbed the man, laying him on the floor and handcuffing him. Pulling him up to his feet, the police started to take him from the building. As they walked out of the nursing home, he looked back to the young woman. She was smiling at him and said in German something. As he was led out the door, she yelled to the last officer, "Wait!" He dropped this Bible. Handing the officer the Bible, she said, "He was waving it all around. I think it was his wife's." A detective arrived and questioned everyone about what had happened, and few could agree if there had been a gun. With only a Bible in hand, no gun present, the detective decided the man would be charged with disorderly conduct and creating a disturbance. He would probably be held for several days for psychiatric evaluation and then released. Mary was not particularly fond of any police force, so she did not offer them help in understanding what had happened in the lobby. It appeared clear to Mary that a man had wanted to commit suicide, and in Mary's mind, that did not constitute a crime. The police need not be involved. Besides, It also appeared the young woman had, for some reason, chosen to befriend the man, choosing to not only save his life, but to keep him out of prison. This was a very interesting young woman, and Mary intended on meeting her.